Hi again, welcome back. So, this time, what my dad and I are going to do is answer some questions that we anticipate people watching this will have. And if you have any others, feel free to comments below and we'll try to get back to you as soon as we can. So, the first question I'm sure many people are wondering about is should you wear a face mask if you are sick or you think you might be sick?
Well, if you are sick or think you might be sick, then coughing, sneezing, breathing, talking can all spread the virus. So if you wear the face mask, then you can protect those around you. And then those around you, if for whatever reason they have to be close to you while you are sick, uh, can also wear a mask to help protect themselves from you. The sick person should wear just a surgical mask, or if available, or a homemade mask or scarf or bandana or whatever to contain the spray from their mouth, uh, if available. Uh, and if you've had a known person with known COVID-19 or strongly suspected, ideally you would have an N95 mask to protect the well person.
Right. So each mask, if you're not aware yet, has a different amount of protection it offers. And the protection it offers might be more so for the people around you if you're sick, or it could be for yourself if you're around other people who are sick. So N95 tends to be the recommended one to protect yourself if you're around other people who are sick. We're filming this on April 3rd, so we know that there's a huge shortage in the United States of N95 masks. So if you're watching this soon, we're not saying go out and try to get your hands on one, but what we are saying is try to use something in the place of that so that you minimize the amount of spread that comes from your own mouth or reaches your nose or your mouth. The other question would be what other things should people wear besides a face mask to protect themselves?
Well, I guess to illustrate by example, when I'm working in my office and I'm repeatedly exposed to sick people, some of whom may have COVID 19, in addition to wearing an N95 or N99 mask, um, I wear goggles. And this particular pair of goggles I like, got them off of Amazon. I originally purchased this model for work because the cheaper goggles that I was using, the lenses were not as clear and they weren't as comfortable. These are very comfortable and the lens is very clear and they fit over my glasses. And I can wear these all day and they're not going to fog up. They're not going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to be able to see clearly through them. So, something like this works out fine. Now, if I were going to be taking an MP swab of somebody to test for COVID-19, this may not be adequate because it doesn't seal around my face totally. It protects around it but doesn't seal. So it depends on your degree of exposure, how high a level of goggle protection you need. But I think these are very, very comfortable and you can see clearly, and I think, are reasonably protective. Certainly far better than nothing or just wearing plain glasses.
The other thing is you don't need like medical grade goggles. The idea is to just seal off the eye area as much as possible. So would if somebody has say swimming goggles, would you say that would be useful?
Sure, yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the swimming goggles obviously have to keep out water, so they have to make a perfect seal,
Mm-hmm.
and that would actually be more effective in protection than this is. So, if you're in a situation where let's say you're at home and you want to protect yourself from a sick family member, and you're only going to be wearing it for a few minutes, you're going to go into a quarantine room to do whatever you need to do, sure, put those swimming goggles on. They would be perfect.
And do you want to show the people the at-home mask we made with a paper towel? So we saw this online. It's very cheap, easy thing to do. So if you are really in a pinch and you have no idea how to get a mask for yourself, or say like your city said, if you're going to go out in public now, you have to wear a mask. Like we've heard LA and New York started doing yesterday, I think it was. This is something super basic. We can't speak to how effective it is, but it will be at least something.
Okay, so basically all you do is take a paper towel and you fan fold it. The folds look like they're about 3/4 of an inch in width, and you fan fold it all the way across. And then you just take 2 regular rubber bands, you put it in here, fold the towel over and staple it here, and then so now you do that on both ends, and then just to show how this works, put the rubber band around your ears, and then actually it works better if you start to unfold it before you put it on, because it's hard to find the edges at that point. So I'm going to do it this way. And this is just a paper towel. So assuming you have paper towels and rubber bands,
and staples, yeah.
Yeah, and a stapler. There you go. And so if I cough, I would say practically all those droplets are going to be contained inside this mask.
But the virus is smaller than that, right?
Well, the virus is riding on the droplets, contained in the droplets. So if you contain the droplets, you contain the virus. So if I cough, it's all here in the mask, as opposed to shooting 30 feet across the room, or sneeze or whatever. So yeah, so this is paper towel, 2 rubber bands, and 2 staples.
Yeah, so that's the really simple DIY version. The other thing we should talk about is making sure you use the mask properly. The WHO has a really good, succinct video on this, but basically with the mask or the goggles, you don't want to touch the front of it when you're taking it off. So when you make sure you just focus on these rubber or elastic ear wraps for putting it on and taking it off, and try to make sure you have a seal around here as much as possible to keep everything inside.
So it's likely you're going to have to touch this part, because you want to make sure that that's conforming to your nose. Otherwise you'll have a leak, and if you have a leak, then you're not being adequately protected.
Yeah, the other thing is, if the mask is sucking in on your face when you breathe like this, that's actually a good sign, right? Because it means the seal is really good. So it makes it a bit less comfortable to wear, but it does mean the seal is better. So less will get in on the edges or come out on the edges.
The other thing about the mask is, if you have a valve mask like that, that's protecting you, but it's letting your exhalation come out the valve. So it's less protection from the people around you. So if you're trying to isolate in both directions, this won't work, because it's not going to be very effective in preventing exposure of others to you.
Right. So if you're the healthy one taking care of the sick person, this might make more sense for the healthy one.
Yes.
Less sense for the sick one.
No sense for the sick one.
Well, it would be less. You would get
little.
Less droplets.
It would not be very effective. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And then again, when you take it off, don't touch the front, because things could have gotten on the front. The virus could be on the front. So take it off from the edges. Put it somewhere no one is likely to get anywhere near it. Don't touch it. If you're reusing the mask, which most likely you are right now because of shortages, just keep it out of the way. Like, put it on top of a refrigerator somewhere people aren't going to be able to access it. Same thing with the goggles. If you've had them on, take them off. Don't touch the front of it. Put them out of the way. while they just decontaminate on their own, or you could wipe it with a disinfectant and immediately wash your hands. You don't want to start touching things before you've washed your hands. In addition to that, you can wear gloves, latex gloves, nitrile gloves, something like that. But still, wash your hands after you've taken all of this stuff off. Okay.
And if you're going to reuse the gloves, wash the gloves.
Yeah. Yeah, you might need to conserve those too. So I anticipate many people are going to ask about living in smaller places than what we have. Either a smaller house or an apartment, where they don't have, say, a door to the outside, or they have to, say, leave the room to use a restroom. What should somebody do in a smaller place like that?
Okay, so let's say I have to leave this room. I'm sick. I have to leave this room and enter the house for some reason that I can't avoid. Then if I do that, I want to put on a glove. I mean, I want to put on my mask to protect others from my breathing, coughing, sneezing. I want to put on gloves so that anything, and be careful I don't go touching the gloves to contaminated surfaces. I want to have these gloves clean so that when I leave the room and I'm touching things outside in the regular part of the house, only the clean gloves are doing the touching, not my hands. Um, I want to be careful to minimize the time I do it. I want to go in, do my business, and get out. If it's into another bathroom, ideally, if you have more than one bathroom, consider one the dirty bathroom, and only the sick person uses that. So, and everybody else stays out of there, so that that person just dons their glove and mask, goes into the dirty bathroom, does what they need to do, redons their mask and gloves, and gets back into the quarantine room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what if they have to share a bathroom though? What if you're like in an apartment in New York City, you have roommates and there's only one bathroom to, say, like, four people?
Well, boy, that's that's really tough. I suppose in that case you would have to enter the bathroom as you did with the dirty bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
but then when you're done, uh, don your gloves. You'd have to have, let's say, some dilute chlorine solution or other disinfectant, and wipe down everything that you've touched.
Mm-hmm.
The toilet seat, the sink, sink handles, everything that was touched.
Mm-hmm.
Wipe it all down with a disinfectant, the doorknobs, and exit.
I was just thinking, for certain things you have to do in the bathroom, like brushing your teeth, maybe you should just get a bowl of water and do that in your room. Because, like, when you brush, it sprays out. You can't help it. That's just the act of brushing your teeth.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So if you
Yeah.
had a couple, let's say, gallon jugs or
Yeah.
large
Mm-hmm.
container of water, or even one of those 17-gallon bins like you get over at Home Depot, and you fill one of those things up with water,
Mm-hmm.
you would have like a reservoir, and you just dip in and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And maybe even, I mean, this might sound gross to most Americans, but people in parts of the developing world, this is going to sound totally normal. Do some, like, washing in your room with, like, a basin, like old fashioned style, like you're going back 200 years. To minimize how much you need to go into that bathroom.
Or get a
Yeah,
urinal
yeah.
and toss it out the window when you're done.
Okay. Okay, let's say you're the one being in quarantine, your
Uh-huh.
isolation, whatever you want to call it, and you're wondering how often should people be bringing you food and supplies, because obviously you don't want to keep exposing them. So, what's like a fair amount to expect from, say, a roommate or a family member who's, like, freaked out by getting anywhere near you?
Well, I think if you should set up your room in such a way as to maximize your independence. So, like in the situation where we set it up, we had cooking utensils, we had a refrigerator. Uh, that was very very minimal
Mm-hmm.
need for contact. What do we need? I mean, you brought dinners
Mm-hmm.
every night,
Yeah.
but I could have put maybe several TV dinners
Freezer part.
in the freezer
Yeah,
part
yeah.
of the refrigerator, and
Mm-hmm.
probably have gone days at a time without needing any.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to vary depending on your ability, what you're able to put into the quarantine room. Can you put a refrigerator? But even like you were saying before, a cooler.
Yeah.
A cooler, if you have a decent amount of ice in there, should last at least a day.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if you can survive on whatever you have in that room, then that minimizes the amount of time somebody has to come and re up your supplies. But if they come, then they can just knock on the door and leave it on the floor outside the door without having to get near you if you're the sick one.
Now
Yeah.
this is a little bit unrelated, but in my case, I was able to get tested relatively early and with a quick turnaround uh, because of things that were available in my office, and the fact that I could actually sample myself. That I didn't have to expose my office staff to me to get that sample. But over time, these tests are going to be becoming more and more available, and the turnaround time is going to get much, much faster. So while you're in quarantine, I would recommend to look for testing, because if you can get tested and get a result, then you can get out of isolation if you can determine you're not infected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or not infected with COVID-19.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So we have some stuff in this room that obviously most people are not going to be able to get into their quarantine room. So let's talk about the alternatives one more time, just to make it easier for people. So we put a fridge in here. You don't absolutely need one, so the alternative would be
Cooler.
a cooler, right? We have a microwave in here. If you don't have an extra microwave, you just don't need to heat your food, I guess. You stick to cold food if you have a cooler. People can leave you warm food outside your door. The other thing we were talking about in the previous video we made was being able to do your own dishes if possible in your quarantine room, so that you don't potentially put virus on a dish that then goes back into a kitchen that's shared with other people who are currently healthy but could get infected. But if the dish were to go back, make sure everything is really, really cleansed properly and disinfected.
Or another option would be to put everything, let's say, in a plastic bag, and then the person in the kitchen wearing gloves and personal protective equipment immediately takes all those dishes, sticks them in the dishwasher, and runs the dishwasher. That the dishwasher is going to sterilize it, but they have to be careful. They have to be careful not to touch those with their hands.
Right.
Or if you screw up and you touch it, wash your hands when you're done.
Right. It's not like if you've touched the virus, you're automatically infected. It's if it then gets to a receptor in your body, which is going to come through your nose, your mouth, or your eyes, right?
Yeah, well, technical term wouldn't be receptor. It would be like a mucous membrane.
Okay.
Such as in your eye, nose, or mouth.
Okay. Yeah. So just if you've touched it, don't freak out. Like, as long as you wash yourself properly, you should be okay.
Yeah, as long as after you've touched it, you don't then touch your mucous membranes.
Right. Okay. So let's think of other alternatives. We put an electric kettle in here. An obvious alternative that would be cheap would be,
well, the microwave will heat
if you
water.
have that. But if you don't have that, then maybe a thermos. So somebody could leave you a thermos of hot water once or twice a day. Let's see, are there any other things? Oh yeah, the air purifier. If you don't have that, open the windows. Okay, get some fresh air and air circulating through the room. Okay, could more than one sick person share the same room?
That's hard to answer with a yes or no, because I think it all depends on a lot of factors, and so I could give you, maybe illustrate by scenarios. So if two people, let's say in a family there was a known COVID-19 case, it was classic symptoms, they were tested, they confirmed it, and now two more family members are coming down with classic symptoms. I think in that scenario, one could reasonably assume that they both have COVID 19 and could share the room. Uh, that kind of makes sense. If there isn't a confirmed COVID 19 case, and one person is having maybe a little diarrhea, and the other person's having cough and fever, I would be uncomfortable exposing those two people together because one's statistically more likely to have it than the other.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to give it to the one who doesn't have it. So, uh, you know, so I would try to avoid exposing those two people together, but due to space constraints, it's gonna depend on the layout of your house, how much room you have. Can you set up two quarantine spaces in the house? What if you have 8 people in the house and several have gotten sick? You just multiply that. I think it has to be individualized.
So if you are, is it okay to say if people are showing the same symptoms, they most likely have the same illness if they're living together?
Most likely.
Not a guarantee without doing a test.
No. But as I was saying before, as the testing becomes more readily available and the turnaround times become faster, I mean, they're talking about tests that can give you the results in minutes. If you can get those done, get an answer to the question quickly, and then use that information to guide what you do. But that's going to be a little while. It'll probably be probably a few weeks from this date, but
like late April, early May, maybe.
Yeah.
So at this point, we wouldn't be. You couldn't do that. But the idea being, when you have that information, you have a test result, and you've gotten an answer, then you can make better informed decisions on what you should or should not do. I just thought of this question. How long, like let's say you've been in the quarantine room, you've recovered, and you can now leave the quarantine room, how long should it be before other people start entering the quarantine room? People who have never been infected.
Okay, so in the situation we just had, I was in the room for 4 days, but I eventually got a negative test result back. So although I was sick with a cold, I was no more. If it weren't for this COVID-19, I would never have isolated in the first place. So in that sense, we could call the room clean.
Okay.
So, but if I were confirmed COVID-19 or strongly suspected COVID-19, I would say the room should be decontaminated. So what does that mean? That means everything, all the surfaces have to be wiped down with disinfectant. Barring that, if you didn't do anything, if it just sat there because nobody got sick for a week, probably after 3 days, for practical purposes, it would self-sterilize. Would you be able to recover the virus on some surfaces longer than that? Probably. Would there be enough of it to be a problem that you'd likely get? Probably not. But if you're going to stick somebody in quarantine and there's any question about it at all, like it's been maybe 2.5 days or it's just 3 days, just wipe everything down. Disinfect everything.
How were you communicating with family members for things that you needed while you were quarantined?
So I used email, text messaging, telephone.
Yeah, I would probably recommend make sure you have a way to get a hold of somebody. Like, for example, my phone, I've set it on, like, I won't hear notifications unless they come from specific apps, so make sure whatever method you're using is something that the person is likely to receive, that they're checking that thing or being notified by their phone. Otherwise, you might find yourself pretty frustrated in quarantine if you've been ignored for several hours and you really need something. One other thing that we didn't put in here that I'm thinking we should add is some like basic like medicine, like cough medicine or like headache medicine, like,
Well,
yeah.
I carry some in my briefcase, and I had my
Okay.
briefcase with me, so like things like ibuprofen
Yeah.
and stuff like that I had.
Yeah. But for other people who are watching, if they,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. You
yeah.
well, when I
Mhm.
came into the room, I took a a piece of luggage suitcase, and I packed as if I were going on a trip. And I
Mhm.
put in all my clothes and this and everything that I
Mhm.
was going to need as if I were going on a trip because I was moving into this room
Mhm.
for unknown amount of time.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's what I did. And then after I got in there, I made a list of all the things I forgot. And then like once a day, the list would get checked off, and my I would get resupplied.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe,
So
to be efficient, if you have
yeah,
like a routine check-ins, like someone knocks on the door every like 4 hours or so, asking, "Do you need anything?" Something like that might be helpful. But if someone's sleeping, you don't want to wake them up. All right. Hmm. Do you have any other things that you want to share with people?
no, not nothing specific at this time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure everybody's got their own individual concerns and questions. You can
Mm-hmm.
leave them on the comments. We'll try to answer them the best we can.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have any tips or tricks that you figured out,
Mm-hmm.
please again share them on the comments so that
Mm-hmm.
we can all benefit from them.
Yeah. Thanks.